Alixion, originally planned to be part of Doctor Who's 27th season, but we all know what happened after season 26. The show unfortunately got cancelled, meaning Alixion was relegated to the mist of time. But that wasn't always the case, because back in season 25, Alixion was going to fill the Graham Curry's Happiness Patrol slot, but the story wasn't ready in time for it to fill that, and the Happiness Patrol was reinstated. And you can definitely see how Alixion would have filled the same vibe as the Happiness Patrol, because the story has similar elements to it. Alixion itself has caused some intrigue for fans over the years, because back in the 1990s, Doctor Who magazine reported that this would have been the 7th Doctor's regeneration story. Now, in this adaptation, it does play with the idea of the 7th Doctor regenerating, and you can sort of see where the story would have gone if this was the 7th Doctor's last adventure. But Alixion hasn't been left to fan intrigue and the mist of time. Roll in Big Finish's Lost Stories range, which is on a high right now with Operation Werewolf, Death World, and one of my personal favourite releases of the year, Genesis of the Cybermen. So does Alixion continue that winning streak for the Lost Stories? No. Best way I can describe Alixion to you is with this, the humble Blu-ray collection set. Now, mainly with the McCoy Blu-ray set, there are extended cuts of episodes we've seen hundreds of times, and you watch those extended versions and you go, yeah, I can see why they cut that. Alixion is essentially a Blu-ray collection version of the story, but without seeing the television version first. Alixion originally was going to be a 3-part story, and with this Big Finish adaptation, it is a 4-part story. So this leads me to my biggest issue with the story, which is padding. This story has more padding than a furniture shop, because the part length for this story is, again, very chunky. If you are definitely getting your money's worth when listening to this story, because the shortest episode is like 28 minutes, then there's like 32, 35 and 40 minutes. So that leads me to, like I say, the biggest issue is padding. This story is sort of the opposite of Ghostlight, where Ghostlight is trying to be cool and edgy, where you're sort of trying to find the deeper meaning and find the plot of what this story's about. Alixion is essentially, there is a good story there, it's just suffocating in the padding of the story, where you sort of have to really listen to get what the story's trying to go for with the plot. Because, like I say, it's sort of drowning in the padding of this story. Because, like I say, there is a good story there, you've just really got to find it. The story itself, so part 1, we see the 7th Doctor and Ace looking through brochures, which kind of reminds me of sort of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, where they're sort of looking through junk mail, but without the junk mail robot. And they are looking to sort of go, we kind of need a rest, we've been through a lot. And they land upon Alixion, this luxurious spa, which is famed for this elixir, which has a deadly secret behind it. So they arrive at this luxurious spa, where everything's all happy and lovely and quite quaint, and the 7th Doctor and Ace are shown to their rooms, and their rooms are sort of tailor-made and sort of linked to their subconscious, to sort of a memory. And I think this is where the story really shines with the character work for the 7th Doctor and Ace. If you're a 7th Doctor and Ace fan, you'll love this, because I think that it is so authentic. And it feels weird to say authentic because, yeah, this is authentic because it's a lost story, so of course it should have that vibe. It really fits the late sort of McCoy era, where we have sort of the 7th Doctor sort of almost testing Ace, what we see in the start of season 25 and in 26. We sort of see the 7th Doctor sort of pushing Ace's character. I think that this has some real great character work, where the 7th Doctor, you know, he's the typical 7th Doctor, he's letting, knows more than what he's letting on, and this really explores Ace's youth. Quite fascinating in sort of in part 3, and in sort of part 4 we sort of get the sort of full circle moment with that. And I think that this story really pushes the Cartmel sort of story ideas, where it's sort of pushing what Doctor Who can be with sort of the domestic kitchen sink side to it, and that's really quite fascinating. So I think it really fits what Andrew Cartmel's vision of the show was and where he wanted to take the show. And it's also very topical with what story themes it brings up in the later parts of the story, which I'll get to, which, you know, were topical back then, and are still topical to this present day, so it's quite a timely release in that regard. So part 1, like I say, is very much traditional. It's world building, setting up the story, so far so good. Part 2, however, is where the cracks really start to show, and where padding really comes into this story, and I think this is where you sort of lose sight of the plot of this story, because this is where I think some of the ideas from television don't translate into the audio medium quite well, and that you sort of are fighting with this audio to sort of get what's going on, whether this is a flashback or this is happening concurrently with the plot. This is very much where the story really started to lose me, where sort of I don't know if it's a sound design or the story, just something made me sort of get lost in the story of what's actually going on. So I sort of lost where the plot was going, because it was sort of becoming side quests within the actual story itself. So yeah, part 2 is where the cracks really started to show, and part 3 is where we get some wonderful character work, like I said, for Ace and, you know, the 7th Doctor, sort of being the classic 7th Doctor, sort of, you know, being the times champion, manipulating events of history around sort of what's happening with Alixion. So yeah, part 3 sort of won me back, but don't get me wrong, there is still padding there. And then part 4, it sort of continues the sort of same themes of what part 3 was, but it's sort of a roller coaster where it's a little bit bumpy, and you get to the conclusion, you're like, oh, it's over. Part 4 has its moments of brilliance, but again, it's really hampered by the sort of the padding of the story, because there are some wonderful bits within it, where you go, yeah, this just feels so right for the McCoy era. But like I say, you've just really got to look for it. My overall thoughts on Alixion, like I say, there is a good story here. You've just really got to work with the audio and listen to it to try and get to the plot, because like I say, this story has more padding than a furniture shop. But like I say, where the story excels and shines is the character work for the 7th Doctor and Ace. I think that they are tremendous. It feels so right for them. If you are a 7th Doctor and Ace fan, then you'll have a good time with this, because it just fits that vision of Cartmel's Doctor Who. And yeah, it feels like they've been plucked out from, you know, 1989 to make this story. It just feels perfect. I think Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred are stunning within this story. The villain of the piece, yeah, it feels very atypical 80s Doctor Who, a little bit camp, but also a little bit generic at times within the actual story itself. But yeah, I think that there are some really neat ideas and concepts, like I say, sort of the more sort of domestic kitchen sink drama side to it, what Doctor Who is sort of pushing more towards in season 26 is prevalent within here, and I think that that sort of pushes the ideas what was set up in season 26 even further in Alixion, which is really great to see, and it's quite topical with what's happening currently in our current political climate right now. So yeah, I think Alixion is a bit of a mixed bag, and I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I think that there is a good story there, character work is so strong, but I just think some of the ideas just don't translate well from the television version to audio, and I think if you could cut some of that padding down, I think if you've got a real strong 7th Doctor adventure. It's just, like I say, drowning in its own elixir of padding. So that has been my review of Alixion, part of the Lost Stories range for Big Finish. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do like and subscribe for plenty more Big Finish related content coming up in the near future, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.